Good evening. Happy holidays, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for December 17th, 2020. The time is 4:30 p.m. My name is Michael Lambert, your city librarian. Since June of this year, I have also been serving in the dual capacity of Library Commission Secretary. I'm pleased to report this December meeting will mark the final commission meeting in which I will be serving as the default Library Commission Secretary. As an ongoing reminder, due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect library commissioners, staff, and the public, the San Francisco Public Main Library and the Corrett Auditorium are closed. However, members will be participating in the meeting remotely. This precaution is taken pursuant to the statewide stay-at-home order and all preceding and proceeding local, state, and federal orders, declarations, and directives. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate in the meeting in the same extent as if they were physically present. Public comment will be available for each item on the agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001. All of this information is on the Library Commission agenda on our website, sfpl.org. If you call in, you can enter the access code for this specific meeting. The access code for today's meeting is 14678288947. When connected by phone, members of the public can dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. Individuals joining via Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. It is in the participant panel, so you can just click on that icon in order to be added to the queue. Best practices for all public commenters are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. All commenters will remain on mute until their line is open. In facilitating this meeting this evening and to assist in moderating public comment, I will be joined for operations support by the library's digital strategist, Bill Kolb. Mr. Kolb will be calling upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. The chat function built into Webex will not be monitored by commissioners or presenters and is not intended as a channel for providing comment or feedback to the commission. Commissioners and presenters will not respond to the content added to the chat. I will now commence with roll call. Library commissioners in attendance are President Dr. Mary Wardell Garaduzzi, Vice President Susan Mall, and Commissioners Ono, Lee, Wong, Wolf, and Dr. Lopez. I will yield to Madam President.
Thank you very much, City Librarian Lambert. Welcome all to this gathering and meeting of, at least a virtual gathering and meeting of the San Francisco Public Library. Today is December 17th. I want to thank you, members of the public who are attending with us remotely. If you have not done so already, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the library's website, which is sfpl.org. That's O-R-G. We have a total of 8 agenda items today. So we are going to begin with item number 1 on the agenda, and we will open it up for general public comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using the Webex interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you have called into the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak now.
It looks like we have one caller.
Thank you.
Operations.
Operations, would you put through the commenter?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
First of all, we're concerned that it's difficult. It may be difficult for some people at times to even get into this meeting, including the fact that the agenda instructions for this meeting and others previously are incomplete and in some cases misleading. I'd be glad to expand on that if anybody were interested in hearing about it, especially at the meeting. A number of general points that I think need to be made. The library needs desperately to review its privacy practices. In a range of ways, these are problematic, and it's understood in library world that patron privacy is key to intellectual freedom. The library is not following its ethical and its stated claims with respect to privacy or its ethical requirements, really. The touting of Facebook on multiple pages of the monthly publication at the library should be stopped immediately, along with the touting of other social media. We've been saying this for some time. You might want to look and see what the Board of Supervisors has done just this week, condemning the naming of Zuckerberg SF General Hospital and so on and so forth for a variety of reasons. The Library Commission should review in detail the limited service being provided to the public currently, particularly in-person service and non-virtual service. Only about a third of the library locations are open. The hours are extremely limited, no evening hours, and so on. The quality of the service should also be reviewed in detail with agenda items, and there have been difficulty, again, with people attending these very meetings. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Operations, are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, that appears to be the final commenter.
Thank you. Hearing no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed. So we're going to move on to our second item on our agenda, which is the announcement of the Library Commission action to appoint a Library Commission Affairs Analyst. And on behalf of the Library Commission, I wish to report that at a special meeting on November 5th, 2020, the Library Commission took action to make an offer of employment and appoint Margot Schaub for the position of Library Commission Affairs Analyst. All commissioners were present, and the roll call vote on this action was unanimous. This action is reflected in the notice of commission action that was included in your packet. Ms. Schaub has now accepted the offer. As Library Commission Affairs Analyst, Margot will perform the functions of Commission Secretary and support these meetings moving forward. Margot is present today for this meeting. I'd like to welcome her as well as congratulate her on her appointment. Before we move into our commission discussion, though, we will first take public comment on this agenda item. So we will move into our public comment and wait for operations to let us know who we have in the queue.
Madam President, there's presently one caller in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the caller through, please?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
I don't know why caller number 5 keeps being called when you know perfectly well who it is, and there's only one caller on the line. Completely confusing. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. This appointment is a bundle of problematic issues. The Commission never voted to approve or discuss in public the name change from Secretary of the Library Commission to what it is now, and the change of duties. The bylaws, in fact, continue to refer to a Secretary of the Library Commission and there's no mention there of this position either. So who is going to do the duties of what's required in the library's bylaws? The commission is supposed to be an independent policy-setting body with its own secretary, as described in the bylaws. And in the past, the secretary was primarily working to assist the commission in carrying out its duties, and it was accountable to the commission. In past years, the commission even would have annual performance reviews of the secretary. Now the position appears to have changed completely, and to be the employee of the city librarian accountable to that position, not the commission, and it reduces dramatically the independence of the commission. This is essentially a power grab, transferring support staff for the commission to the precincts of the city librarian. We hear about democracy. Where is democracy? The duties described are not in concert with fully open government. For example, if you look at Section 67.21 of the Sunshine Ordinance, it says basically anybody who has access to information is a custodian of public records and is supposed to provide them promptly and without unnecessary delay when requested. This changes that, and well, it doesn't change the law, but it changes the way that they're going to handle this stuff in a variety of ways. Custodian of public records, the idea that this secretary or this position is just wrong. The ensuring of library compliance with California's Statements of Economic Interest, Form 700, that's absurd. The library is not responsible. You as individuals, the city librarian and the commissioners, are responsible, and you can't make that go away by a job description. There are other things that are wrong with this job description and with this change, no public process, this change in the title and
3
in
minutes.
the rule.
Thank you for your comments. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters at this time.
Okay, since there's no hearing that there's no commenters, public comment is now closed. We will move into our commission discussion on item number 2. And what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm monitoring, just changing screens here, to monitor the commissioners for discussion on this matter as I'm looking for a raised hand. Yes, Commissioner Wong.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to Margot. We've all met privately, but wanted to say welcome again. It's great to have you on the team. I mean, just to tie up some apparently loose threads, this is not a power grab of any sort. The commission did have a unanimous vote. Margot is serving in capacity of Library Commission Secretary, as is stated in the bylaws. There's nothing that has fundamentally changed there, but Margot, it's great to have your experience on board, and looking forward to working with you in the months and years to come.
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. Any further comment from commissioners? So I'll go ahead and add to Commissioner Huang's congratulations and welcome, Margot. Thank you so much for putting your materials in, and clearly you rose to the top. And we're very excited about this appointment. We're very excited to have you be part of the work that we're doing on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco through the San Francisco Public Library. And we expect that this work that you're going to just add to all the good work that's already happening. So thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you did in preparing the materials for the public for tonight's meeting. So with that, we are going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the San Francisco Public Library Racial Equity Action Plan. And this is going to be another discussion for the opportunity for the commission. This is a presentation and discussion of the draft departmental racial equity plan for the San Francisco Public Library. There are explanatory documents that goes along with this agenda item, including the Departmental Racial Equity Action Plan presentation, as well as the San Francisco Public Library's Departmental Racial Equity Action Plan itself. So I'll turn it over to our city librarian.
Thank you, Madam President, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Library staff truly appreciates this opportunity to present our first ever departmental racial equity plan this evening. This agenda item marks an important milestone in our efforts to address racial equity and social justice in our organization and in our community. You may recall at last month's meeting, library staff introduced information about our efforts to craft this plan. And as a reminder, this activity is legally mandated by Ordinance number 188-19. This is the legislation that gave birth to the city's Office of Racial Equity. The library's Racial Equity Committee has been working hard the past few weeks to develop this Racial Equity Action Plan. And the Racial Equity Committee co-chairs, Shauna Sherman, our acting African American Center Manager, and Alejandro Gallegos, Community Engagement Manager, will be presenting our plan to you this evening. Alejandro and Shauna, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Commissioners, for again giving us this opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. It's very much appreciated, as are your strong words of support. Next slide, please. So this is a lot of work, and it would have been a much inferior document without the necessary involvement of the Racial Equity Committee, Library Human Resources, and Research Strategy and Analytics, with contributions from Access Services, Adult Services, The Bridge, Facilities, Finance, IT, and Youth Services. We wanted to ensure that their contributions were acknowledged here today. Next slide, please. A racial equity action plan supports the department's prioritization of racial equity for our workforce and our city. It functions as a blueprint for advancing racial equity in all aspects of our work. It's both a process and a strategic plan to enact institutional and structural change to achieve racial equity. Why is it necessary? Well, we recognize that San Francisco, although not unique in this, has a long history of creating or enforcing laws and policies that have perpetuated racial inequities. Along with that recognition should come the obligation to address these inequities. In the aggregate, race is a predictor of worse outcomes for people of color in areas as varied as education, income, health, and incarceration. Specific to our library, as far back as 1971, there was a call from within our library by Judy Young, a 25-year-old librarian at the Chinatown branch, for community-centered library service, which included the use of different languages and less stringent rules for patron usage of our libraries. In 1978, a survey conducted by the Friends found that the majority of library users were white, English-speaking, and college-educated. People who reported never using the library indicated that they didn't know where the libraries were, and some found it difficult accessing our services in English. In 1981, the professional class of the library was 7% Black, 2% Latinx, 10% Asian, and 82% white. The paraprofessional class at that time was 32% Black, 6% Latinx, 20% Asian, and 42% white. And we'll go into the current numbers in a little bit. How was our plan developed? Well, the process started with the Racial Equity Committee, which includes a diverse group of staff members with various backgrounds and positions of power within the department. We've grown our group to include representation from almost all divisions in our library, and we were mindful of including staff from different backgrounds and different positions within our department. We have circulation people from Maine and branches. We have librarian 1s, 2s, and 3s from different divisions. We have people from facilities and tech services. We have part-timers, we have full-timers. But expertise and input from others outside of our committee was necessary. We had intensive discussions and dialogue with library HR and with research strategy and analytics. And we asked for input from other people and other teams as well. I'd also like to make clear that the tight deadlines imposed by Board of Supervisors legislation, along with our staff deployment as DSWs, meant that we were unable to engage our staff and other stakeholders as fully as we would have liked. We do intend to do this in the coming year. We've made it part of the plan, and this action plan is a living document. We intend for it to be updated and improved. How will we use it? Well, we're going to use it as our roadmap to accomplish these collective actions. We'll use it as a way to hold ourselves accountable to accomplish these actions. We'll use it to hold these actions in one place, to be able to quickly view the actions, the leads, and involved parties of specific actions. Next slide, please. This slide shows the median SFPL employee salary disaggregated by race. You'll notice that the median salary for all of the race categories are bunched up between $70,000 and $72,000 with one exception. The median salary for the white category is $20,000 above that at about $92,000. That's eye-opening, especially in the context of all the other categories being so close together. But this is also a much larger problem. You'll notice the same racial categories along with the median household income for residents of the city and county of San Francisco. The disparities here are immense, starting at $132,000 for white households, dropping by $44,000 for Asian households, dropping by $60,000 for Hispanic households, dropping by $70,000 for Native American households, and over $100,000 below the $132,000 median income for white households is Black households at $30,000. Next slide, please. Here's a current snapshot of income distribution by job category and race in the library. Let's take a look. Well, yeah, let's take a look at the white column over on the right-hand side. Starting from the top, going down 5 rows, you'll notice 64.7%. From there, as you look all the way to the left, this indicates that about 65% of the library's management is white. A little farther down the white column, you'll notice the 53.9%, 54.4%, and 57.1%. These correspond to the librarian classifications. And if you look at the total number of people in, for example, the librarian 1 classification, you'll notice that the white category makes up 53.9%, a majority of 191 librarian 1 positions. There's a lot of things to look at in this table. I find it really fascinating to be able to see by classification and race where people are in our organization. There's a lot there. Hopefully we get a chance to take a longer look at that. Next slide, please. So before we take you into some brief specifics of our action plan, let me describe how it's organized, the part with the specific action items we're committed to completing. It's divided into these 7 sections: hiring and recruitment, retention and promotion, discipline and separation, diverse and equitable leadership and management, mobility and professional development, organizational culture of inclusion and belonging, and boards and commissions. Next slide, please. And each specific item includes these components: an action, indicators, resources committed, implementation plan, timeline, lead, and status. When looking at the plan, at the detailed document, to get a sense of each item, I'd encourage you to focus on 1, the specific action we'll be taking, 2, on the indicators for that action, which should give us some measure or measures of success, and 3, on the implementation plan, which should indicate how and when the action will be accomplished. My colleague Shauna Sherman will now take you a little more in depth into the heart of our plan, giving you examples from each of these sections. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Oliver. And good evening. I'm going to give highlights for each section of the plan. And last week, after we created our packet to this meeting, the Office of Race Equity released minor edits and changes that we will be incorporating into the final document, including some additions to Section 7, which I'll discuss on that slide. So here on this slide, we have information from Section 1, which includes more than 25 actions related to hiring and recruitment, the longest section in the plan. Our goal here is to practice inclusive recruitment by actively seeking out diverse job candidates and people with non-traditional backgrounds. This section will assess barriers to access for BIPOC and marginalized groups in order to develop strategies to increase racial equity in the library profession, especially within the managerial level. You can see statistics on workforce demographics in the plan as Alejandra just shared. In addition to creating a hiring and recruitment policy, other actions would standardize job descriptions and include an outreach tracking tool that'll help us map our efforts. We will also assess current opportunities in the library for young people and study the possibility of creating an apprenticeship program. To help with completing the actions in our racial equity plan, Section 1 also includes the hiring of an HR Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Senior Analyst, a project position to help guide all the tasks included in the equity plan dealing with our workforce, which in Phase 1 are many. In fiscal year 22, the plan also includes an action to hire a librarian 3 to help steward the plan as a whole and coordinate the various departmental commitments, communicating with library administration, the library commission, staff, and the public. Next slide, please. Section 2 covers retention and promotion. It talks about keeping people within the department once they get here. Our goal here was to develop a strategic focus and provide scaffolding, including formalized mentoring, to bring people of color from within our ranks into higher classifications. This includes developing a clear and intentional path for promotion and advancement. In addition, this section includes actions to study the current COVID-19 deployment and continue to support and advocate for library DSWs. This would mean comparing our DSW deployment information to library workforce demographic data to assess gaps. This section also includes information on a salary survey for the library and review of benefits and PTO policies by fiscal year 22. Next slide, please. In Section 3, Discipline and Separation, we will be analyzing current discipline and separation data by race and developing action plans based on any biases identified. This section also includes implicit bias training for supervisors and tracking disciplinary actions by race. All actions in the plan include a time period for completion, as you can see in the examples on the slides. Next slide, please. Section 4 covers diverse and equitable leadership and is all about being transparent about the makeup of senior leadership within the library and includes a requirement that our annual report include information on the race of leaders in our organization, which we've started doing with the fiscal year 20 annual report. This section also calls for leadership to be continuously trained in anti-bias and anti-racist frameworks, as is mentioned in the slide. It will also include a plan to create an anonymous tool to submit feedback to senior leadership. Next slide, please. Section 5, Mobility and Professional Development, encourages all employees to move up within the ranks of the organization and will work to provide robust professional development opportunities for staff through training and workshops and opportunities to go to conferences, as we see on this slide. We will be tracking by race who is using our training opportunities and inform staff of the possibilities for learning and advancement through our annual PPAR process, which is a performance review. Next slide, please. Section 6 Organizational culture of inclusion and belonging includes a lot of the work the Racial Equity Committee will be leading. It also continues work we started, like an annual staff survey, real talk discussion programs, regular communication with staff and the public about the Racial Equity Plan, and the addition of a meaty section on a new accessibility protocol for both programs and services with the help of our Access Services Department. In fiscal year 22, library administration will also be working with the Controller's Office on an internal listening tour of staff. Also part of this section, we will initiate a staff discussion around the library's work order with the Sheriff's Department, balancing the need for security in our libraries and the needs of BIPOC staff who may be triggered by their presence. Next slide, please. Last but not least, Section 7 of this plan deals with boards and commissions. And it should be noted that there were additional actions included in this portion of the Phase 1 framework, which were too late to include in this presentation and which will be incorporated into our plan prior to completing it for the Office of Race Equity. A highlight of this portion includes adopting a race equity assessment tool to inform decision-making on the board, a timeline for passing a resolution around racial equity, and also a timeline for passing a resolution on the Ramaytush Ohlone land acknowledgement. It also includes an assessment and updating of the commission bylaws to include more inclusive language, training for commissioners, and a mentoring program between newer and more experienced commission members. Next slide, please. I know that was a lot. Thank you for taking the time to look at our racial equity plan. It'll take all of us to change the systemic racism present in all of our institutions and government. In the next 2 weeks, we will be revising the plan to meet the new changes by the Office of Race Equity and complete edits based on feedback from the Commission. The plan is due to the Office of Race Equity on December 31st at 5 p.m. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you very much, Michael, for introducing it. And thank you so much for Alejandro and Shauna for that presentation. This is going to be an item for discussion for the commissioners. But before we do that, we're going to have a public comment on this item. Operations, would you let us know if there's commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there is one commenter in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put that commenter through?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. First of all, you have some very good people working on this, and I'm glad of that. And I think it's an important job, and I'm glad you're working on it, although it's required apparently by law. In general, I would say that there are 2 concerns that I would have. One is the absence of outside people outside the library, from what I can see, the apparent lack of outside people, including people who have been excluded or rejected, for example, for employment, or who have been rejected or excluded for promotion and may have left the library. I think there's a phrase among some folks, the gist of it, nothing for me, nothing about me without including me. And the introduction was interesting because there was talk about outside surveys being done to see, pardon? Is somebody saying something?
No, go ahead, caller.
Okay. The description of a racial usage statistics, there was an example given, for example, how come people didn't come to the library to use it? And there were issues of language and issues people didn't know where the library was located. Well, if you were going to do a survey the way that this survey is being done, apparently, and didn't go to the outside folks, you might not find out that there were people not coming because they didn't know where the library was. Likewise, you might not find out. Essentially, your diagnosis would be potentially deficient if you didn't go outside. You want to do a good diagnosis to find out how things got to where they are. I am concerned that the library has ignored a good deal of information that we have given the library with regard to its service to its patrons, which is in many respects negative in the similar way to what you've shown with your statistics to minority users. Paper notices, the internet access, the lack of internet access, and therefore the closure of the library disproportionately affecting the folks who have the least internet access, and you know who those are. The fines and fees. You ignored completely the fees portion of what it is that can bump people out of using the library. And again, we know who is being most affected. I'd like the library to keep
3 minutes
on this, but look at the other stuff as well.
Thank you, caller. Operations, are there any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional callers.
I see one, Bill. We have Naima Dean has her hand raised.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Go ahead and put the caller through.
Naima, your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay, can you hear me speaking? I'm not sure, this is a little complicated. I feel at a loss on this screen, but of course, I just want to call in and say congratulations to our colleagues, and thank you very much for all the work that you've put into coming up with what sounds like, from just what I've heard so far, a wonderful start to making change in our library system. It's long overdue, not just in our library system, but globally. And I'm proud to see us putting energy and focus in that direction and creating positions to support such change. I just want to shout out to that whole committee, because doing this type of work is not only just difficult, like getting together, collaborating, working out the ideas, what's the most important, what's feasible, on top of your regular duties. And I know the work, how the people on that committee work, and they work hard. So as it is, so to take on this work additionally, just kudos to that. On top of it, it's very painful work. It enters your psyche. It takes over your body. You don't sleep. It's rewarding work. And so I hope that you all can have a moment to breathe before you move on to the next phase of this work. And please know that you have my support and love and whatever I can offer. Thank you and congratulations, SFPL. We really need this.
Thank you so much, caller, for your comment. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are additional commenters.
Yes, would you put them through, please?
Jason, your 3 minutes begins now.
Awesome, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Jason.
Awesome, it works. So I just want to agree with Naima. I want to congratulate the Racial Equity Committee, Alejandro, Shauna. It's doing this work is very moving. As one of the, I'm a BIPOC, but Black and Thai. So as one of the 5.3, according to that chart, 5.3 librarian twos on the staff, we see this every day. Like walking into meetings, I know for me, I count how many Black people there are, and I don't see a lot of that. And so this work all around is very important. And I'm so glad that the library, the city is taking this on. I agree with Naima, it's painful to not see our representation within the system. And I'm glad that the work is being done. Yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. Congratulations, and this is such important work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, caller, for your comments. Operations, are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Please put them through.
Marciel, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, yes. First of all, shout out to the Racial Equity Committee. Amazing work. The one thing that I do want to say is I'm so glad that Naima and Jason, both your comments are so important. And I feel really proud right now that this library is moving in a step upward in how we handle the equity issue and the divide as we see in this pandemic right now. There's definitely a digital divide amongst our patrons, having access, different things like that, programming. So I'm looking forward to these positions, and I just want to say that well done. I'm happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, caller. Operations, are there any further commenters?
Madam President, there are no additional public commenters.
Okay, hearing no commenters anymore, public comment is now closed. So Commission, this is a discussion item for us, the racial equity plan that both Alejandro and Shauna, who are racial equity leaders, along with Maureen, are the 3 racial equity leaders for SFPL on behalf of the library to the city and to the Office of Racial Equity. I'm going to go ahead and call you by the order that I saw your hand pop up. So first is going to be Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Racial Equity Committee. The work you're doing is so important. It's inspiring. Your dedication, your attention to detail, as well as your vision for what you want to see changed. I want to be sure you know that you have the support of the Commission in every step along the way. Not only do we want to support you, we want to be partners with you, and we want to be part of the process to help lead the library into this new place. One of the things that's always impressed me about the library is how you as staff have really always risen to be leaders in the field, not only in the city, but in the field. And I just want to encourage you to keep being bold, be leaders, take big steps, and know that you have the support to do that, and that we're there with you to learn from you and to grow with you to make the difference that is needed. I do want to say that one of the things that really concerns me most about moving forward is really the pipeline, and how do we ensure that we have people from all aspects of life understanding the professionalism that libraries can provide them and the opportunities they have in the field. And that's just something that really is important to me, to see how we as a library can again be leaders in thinking through the next generation, getting them involved so that they can see that this is a viable and really important way in which they can be great contributors and have a really meaningful profession. You all model that so beautifully, and I just want to be sure people know that it's available, and so that we really change the pipeline. And so be bold, and I really look forward to how you implement this and how we can learn from you and how we can all grow together. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Ono.
Hi, thank you. I want to congratulate the committee and all of the people that were involved with this phase 1 action plan. I know it is just phase 1, and it's based off of a template, but there are 83 items if I counted correctly. And SFPL is 60% either completed or in progress. And if they're not in that category, then they're already in the preparation phase. So in spite of sheltering in place, in spite of the pandemic, You guys have done an amazing job in just a short amount of time to get us to where we are. And as Connie mentioned, we are usually the first in the city, but also first in the nation. And I also want to echo Naima's, Jason, and Marciela's comments. This is on top of everything else that you guys do, and you have done it, and you are making us so proud. And thank you. And I hope you get to rest over the holidays.
Thank you, Commissioner Ono. Commissioner Lee.
Mute. Yes, now that I'm mute, I have to thank the team in putting all this work together, because there's a massive amount of work and it's a very complicated endeavor. So I'm very grateful that you have all of us educated. So now we know, and we will be party in making this movement going forward and smoothly. If there is anything that I know I could do, just like all of you, to be above and beyond, you can count on me. So I just want to let you know that how much I feel about the quality of work that you have come across. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Mall.
I echo my fellow commissioners' congratulations and applaud your hard work. I have a couple questions. Though I understand this was city mandated, correct, by the Board of Supervisors, I wondered if there was, and I understand that in 1978 there was a whole study, but has there been a lot of internal discussion about this up to this point? Alejandro, if you want to answer, or whoever, or Michael.
Yeah. So our committee had been working on an action plan prior to the formation of the Office of Racial Equity. And we had a rough outline of what we wanted. Originally we had four. This phase one has those 7 sections. We had identified four large sections. We had culture of the library. We had workforce, staff of the library. We had service delivery, like programs and outward facing, and we had community outreach and engagement. So when this when this framework was given to us, and we were at least able to pivot some of the things that we had been doing, we'd already started. So our real talks had come out of our racial equity at the library talks for our staff had come out of the work that we had done previously, trying to do our own racial equity action plan. So that was able to fit right in. That's one of the items that Commissioner Ono said, it's already happening. We're doing those. We just had a successful one 2 weeks ago with our staff. So yeah, we had been doing that work, and Commissioner Mall, and this was just a different way to do it. We knew that after the legislation passed, we had to fit it into a certain framework.
Right.
The framework came pretty late for us, well, for everyone, and the legislated due date by the end of the year essentially meant we couldn't, to address some of the public comments, essentially meant we didn't have the time to be able to engage the public or even our staff as fully as we would have liked. And that's also why we built in the ability to do that in the coming year as well. We do want that input.
Right.
And phase 2 will be outward facing, and we expect that there's going to be a lot of engagement with our public.
And maybe this is implicit in it, and I've sort of missed it, but are you doing the same kind of analysis with the programming of the library?
That is going to be phase 2, where we're going to start to look at. So this phase 1 is essentially looking at internally at our institution from the inside.
Right.
And we're very much, I think a lot of us, we're public servants. That's what we do. Like, we are here at the library to help our residents thrive and to make our communities dynamic. So we're really itching to just, let's start this outward facing. We want to see what we can do for our communities, for our families, for our seniors? Like how is that going to look? We know that that's something that is coming, and we're really excited to tackle that.
Well, I would just like to say, you know, I'm not obviously as intricately involved as the staff is, but just from a sort of interested bystander, I have always thought that the library has done an excellent job of programming for every racial, cultural, social group in the city. Now, maybe the programs aren't in the right places, or, you know, it certainly needs to be looked at. But I would say that you've done a great job on that score. I'm not as familiar with the internal workings of the staff of the library, but I think it's great that you're attacking this whole issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. Commissioner Lopez.
I just want to say this is a lot of work, and it's a great work. I mean, this could be a dissertation for someone. The amount of work, but the details. So there's a couple of things that I want to say. One is that I know, and I can't recall who mentioned it, that this will be a living document, and that's very important. And I think that we should keep that in mind, that all the effort and the work that is going into is going to be growing, and it's going to be developing, and it's going to be modified. So, you know, I think that that's something very important, because, you know, my experience is that oftentimes we look deep into the issues and then it gets filed. So I'm glad to hear that everyone is thinking that this is moving forward. So having that in mind also gives me the hope that it's giving voice to a lot of the staff and a lot of people that might not have felt that they were included in the process, or they might have felt that, you know, their issues as diverse staff might not be counted. So I really commend you for that. I do have a question in terms of the staff development and the trainings. You know, some of the ideas that are proposed that staff will be able to attend trainings, and then I was thinking, is there a plan, or maybe that's phase 2, but is there a plan of evaluating or engaging people that do go into these trainings where the information doesn't stay with the staff, but it continues to grow? So kind of like train the trainer in a way. I don't know if that's, again, you know, if that's going to be in phase 2 or later on, but I am a true believer of going into training, but also that, you know, that information gets passed on and that is reflected or evaluated in some way. So I just want to say thank you. I have enjoyed reading the document and learning, and it must be painful, like, you know, when you do this type of work and you see very clearly that the numbers are there, and where we need to work on and what needs to be done. So thank you so much. I'm available. I really support all the work that you're doing, and it's a lot. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to, you know, to make comment on that and congratulate you on your work.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez. All the commissioners' comments were really, really wonderful. I'm just going to say very quickly that this is how institutions begin to do the kind of reconciliation work that oftentimes are what we call blind spots. And one of the things I want to pick up on a question or a comment that Commissioner Mall had said, and about the the wonderful integrated and diverse programming that you see coming from SFPL. And you can have that outward facing work in an organization, and at the same time, you can have deeply disproportionate outcomes that leads to individuals not being able to fully participate in the promises of the field, that thereby turns into longstanding inequities in regard to wealth gaps and people's ability to access all the what we call the full quality of life indicators. And so one of the reasons I love this work so much is painstaking is because it's very few organizations in a U.S. context will actually have the courage to do this kind of work. This is deeply courageous work to look and actually become transparent, to show the data, the numbers by position. The power of this project is by aggregating by not only race, but you're aggregating by positions. And so once you see those, as we saw what Alejandro and Shauna showed us tonight, you can't fight the data. So what has happened is that organizations have had a facade of inclusion, but they haven't yet realized the promise of equity. And so I just want to thank you all for this first step, and I'm excited to see what 2021 will bring. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, where we're going to hear for the first time to hear our Chief Financial Officer. Financial years 2022 and 2023. We're going to listen to the budget priorities, and I'm going to turn, and this is going to be a discussion matter as well for the library commission once our presentation and public comment is over.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Heather Green, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for that warm and enthusiastic introduction. I feel very, very glad to be here and thankful. And I really just appreciate the conversation we were just having. If you don't mind me taking a moment to note, all your comments are very uplifting from the public comment staff and from Commission as well. It's exciting to be a part of that work and the overall library's work, as you'll see here in our priorities presentations. So I have you have the next slide, please. So this should look familiar for those of you who've been on Commission a little while. This is a reminder of what the budget development process looks like within the greater context of the city's overall process. So last month you heard from Maureen Singleton about the department's budget priorities, which I'll review briefly in a moment for a refresher. You can see we're here at the start of the yellow arrow, Commission budget proposal discussions. Please note that that arrow is not a 1-month arrow, it's a 3-month arrow. That's always been the case. I didn't change the graph, but I do want to underscore it because it's especially true this year. We are in unprecedented times, and that applies directly to the city's budget as much as it does to our lived reality. I'll talk more about the context on the next slide, but here I just want to emphasize that the department will be continuing to work through budget proposals, especially on the capital and facilities side over the weeks to come. We just need that time to be able to work through priorities in light of the budget information we received just yesterday from the Mayor's Budget Office. So you will see our most up-to-date ideas here in this presentation. We welcome your questions and comments, certainly, as always, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in the new year as the ideas come into more sharply prioritized focus. Next slide. As I mentioned, context this year is especially important. As you know, the library works on a 2-year rolling budget, which means we budget for 2 years every year. Received just yesterday were the instructions from MBO, the Mayor's Budget Office, along with our Library Preservation Fund estimates. The Budget Office is projecting a $411 million deficit in fiscal 22 and a $242 million deficit in fiscal 23. Those numbers were released too late to be included in writing here, but they will be in the slide deck for January. By comparison, last year this time, the projections estimated $420 million in deficit over 2 years. So what we thought was going to be, so like last year's 2-year deficit is this year's just 1-year deficit. We're in a very different place here, obviously, in the midst of the pandemic. Sales, hotel, and business taxes have all been lower than expected, and most unions refuse to accept a delayed timetable for cost of living increases. High-level budget instructions to general fund departments were to cut 7.5% of their adjusted general fund support, plus to come up with 2.5% cuts for contingency. So that's for general fund departments. The library, from the budget office perspective, is a non-general fund department, so our picture is a little different. We need to balance within our own funds. Still, though, we are affected because our library preservation fund targets depend on general fund projections. So we got our preservation fund target, and that is $153 million in fiscal 22 and $168 in fiscal 23. The fiscal 22 number is slightly lower than what we were carrying for fiscal 22 in the last budget cycle, which was 156.6. So this is a continuing story from last year on the revenue front. As part of last year's budget cycle, the fiscal 21 budget was revised down from 169 to 152, so a much bigger hit. But in this current budget, we need to continue to be careful, even more careful, more thoughtful, to be the best possible stewards of public funds and resources. A note here also on the slide listed are just a few of the current budget unknowns. So what happens at the state, also the federal level, worth noting, if federal stimulus comes through with aid to state and local governments, perhaps the pressure eases a bit, and exactly what we do with our COVID response as that escalates or de-escalates will affect the strain on the general fund. Next slide. Here you can see a refresher of the budget priorities Maureen discussed last time. In the circle, our continuing commitment to library excellence in our programming, organization, engagement, and facilities. And then over on the right, 2 graphics that call attention to the twin citywide priorities of racial equity and economic recovery. These were explicitly called out in budget instructions this week. Even though we did the slide in advance, we knew that those priorities have been pretty clear for a while now. The mayor's priorities were for supporting economic recovery, including small businesses, but also prioritizing programs with demonstrated outcomes, especially for mental health and homelessness, equity, and COVID needs. Regarding racial equity, we know that this is work that requires multiple simultaneous strategies, as you just heard. Phase 1, which you just heard about, looking at the organization, how can we be more equitable with our processes and decisions as a city? And then phase 2 upcoming in the current year to think about our public-facing services and interactions and overall accessibility. We don't want to be behind the 8 ball come fiscal 22 on that front. So we're thinking about that now as our first phase plan is being finalized. A note on economic recovery, obviously paramount as we continue to fight all the many damaging aspects of the pandemic. An important strategy that the library can support, which was one of the leading ideas in the Economic Recovery Task Force's report, which is my previous life, is to invest in capital projects because those have a job multiplier effect. So we can also think, in addition to that, about what role the library can play as information sharers, resource connectors, and things in line with our overall mission. And again, considering the organization itself and what we can do to create more opportunities for more people. Next slide. Turning now to the budget proposals themselves, the next 3 slides capture the ideas that have come up through our divisions as we think about what funds we need to build into the budget on top of the baseline, especially in the coming year. So up top, we have a book vending machines proposal. We had 1 vending machine in the budget for fiscal 22 from last cycle. The proposal here is to add 2 more. 1 in fiscal 22 to deliver more robust access in the Southeast, with one location in the Dogpatch and one at Hunter's View, and another in fiscal 23 at Treasure Island. Those are one-time investments with modest ongoing costs that can largely be absorbed in the branches and admin budgets. I'll note that the machines themselves are scalable, and so this number represents the upper bound of what we might budget. There's a $10,000 supplies line here for the bookmobile to meet the needs of delivering that service. That would be ongoing. Our Youth Engaged in Library Leadership program, or YEL, has been a summer program with a $500 scholarship. This proposal would make it a year-round program with cohorts in the fall and winter spring as well. The proposal, as you can see, captures the increase in fiscal 22 of $40,000 on top of the already budgeted $30,000, and then continues at that scale in the proposed fiscal 23. The collection supplies line proposal is restoring a cut that we had to make for budget balancing in last year's budget. There are a couple of fleet requests here, one for a truck and one for a services van, both at the end of life. And finally, at the bottom, a proposed investment in the resilience of our facilities, which are, as we see every day now, being asked to deliver much more than just book and media services. Given that these funds would be available in July at the earliest, this is not really a COVID resilience. Knock on wood, we are in a different place with that by July. But the intention is to address those now chronic and rising hazards that the library is especially well suited for and called to help mitigate, namely heat and air quality. This proposal is scalable and the investments are one time for each site, but there are a lot of needs here. Next slide. Regarding racial equity, I'll start with the note here at the bottom that, as you just heard, the library intends to support temporary hire and support of internal racial equity work, since the current environment makes it difficult to add permanent positions, but that is certainly the direction we intend to move towards as the budget picture lightens, hopefully as soon as possible. Also worth noting is the way that the library itself, through its core functions, as Commissioner Marm mentioned, functions like promoting learning, sharing resources, and connecting people to ideas, delivers for San Franciscans of color every day. Of course, we have room to improve. We can do more. We can do better. But I just want to emphasize that this list of proposals is not by any stretch that everything the library does, intends to do, and will do with respect to racial equity. That's a big part of who we are and who we're trying to be. The first proposal here is for the major one-time investment in staff training through DHR, who has developed a curriculum on this front. That's a one-time investment for the upfront large-scale training that would touch across the organization. And it's one time because thereafter we expect to be able to carry the costs in our ongoing training budget once that kind of surge training is complete. The Maine proposes a project to connect with immigrant communities in the neighborhoods surrounding the Maine. The exact scope of this work is still coming together, so it's why it's out in fiscal 23. There was a project envisioned, but with the pandemic, it had to be shelved. And so we are thinking that if the library has an SF fellow in fiscal 22, we could potentially have that person help with scoping for fiscal 23 and come out the gate with a really strong project. There's a $30,000 proposal for technology. That's a one-time investment for the occasional needed refresh to support online high school and Project READ. And then $35,000 is proposed for a teen racial equity project. This is modeled along the lines of something that was delivered in Kansas City. This program would include stipends for the youth participating, I think 6 sessions, and be facilitated through the Human Rights Commission, which has done similar work across the city so successfully. And finally, and I personally have been very inspired by this one, we are proposing to make our libraries even more inviting, connect our youngest readers, and extend a love of reading into the homes of low-income San Franciscans by seeding home libraries. Next slide, please. And lastly, for proposals on the economic recovery front, as I mentioned before, investing now in capital will pay job dividends that the city sorely needs. San Francisco's unemployment rate was at 6.9% in October. That is certainly down from the double-digit peak from earlier this year, which was an extraordinary shock to our city, but it's still triple our pre-pandemic low. We were living in between 2 to 3% unemployment, which is, lower than full employment from the 90s, certainly. But 6.9 is not where we want to be. You can see here there's a $350,000 proposed reconfiguration of spaces within the main, and also a line item of amount to be determined, as I mentioned, as my office and the facilities team will work with Public Works and our city librarian and COO to understand the real numbers for the budgets for some known priority projects, including building improvements at 199th Street and the Civic Center campus and Marina. As with the racial equity slide, I'll note here again that SFPL already has programmed on top of this capital, imagining many initiatives and programs that support San Francisco's economic recovery, including the Work It and Tech Time programs, our stipend and fellowships and awards, and our partnership with YouthWorks. I've been here just a couple of months now, and it's so gratifying to be part of this organization that does so much for our city. Next slide. Finally, looking ahead, as I mentioned, we will be digesting everything we've learned from MBO, along with the controller's projections to refine our proposals so that we deliver what we need to deliver while protecting ourselves from fiscal risk in the short term. I'll be back in January with the refinements for your review and having incorporated comments, ideas, and questions that you raise here today. And then in February, we will ask for your approval prior to submitting our department budget to the mayor. And the deadline for submission is February 22nd this year. Last slide. Friendly questions of all kinds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather, for that very comprehensive budget overview. We know we have at least 2 more times, but January we'll have a more in-depth discussion, but you may have some comments and discussion later with the commission. We're going to go to public comment on this agenda item, and then we'll come back to the commissioners. Operations, is there any callers in the queue?
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Would you please put the commenter through?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. So first of all, welcome to the first public appearance of the new person in charge of money matters, and best of luck in going forward with it. We certainly also have the same wishes for the new Library Commission Secretary or Commission Affairs Analyst, whatever the title is, and wish her well as also. We actually have done so in private. The budget here has some questions, certainly. I'm missing the pie charts showing what the budget breakdown is with respect to how much, what percentage is spent to be spent on books, for example, books and materials. What kind of books and materials, electronic, paper, and so on and so forth. I'm missing any comparisons that I can see directly with the full book budget and the breakdowns by materials, for example, with prior years. I'm not clear that that's in here either. And that those things have been provided in the past and are certainly would be of interest. We have talked about the de-emphasis on books and at times de-bookification. And at least this time, I'm glad to see the word book in the budget, and a hint about books with respect to what looks like seeding or spending money on private libraries, although we have a concern about private libraries. The essence of a library is sharing the materials, and presumably we have branches in every neighborhood. I'm very concerned with $920,000 that appears to be on the unnumbered page concerning strategic priorities for book vending machines. I hope we're not selling anything. This is a library, and it's free and equal access. But in any case, $920,000, and that for what? 2 machines? That seems extraordinary. We've seen machines previously, and there's a problem with connecting folks with information to the bigger library and maybe drawing them away from going to the richness of the full library. We're concerned about the private library, $700,000 worth. I'd certainly like to hear more about that. We have not heard anything about that.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, commenter. Operations, is there anyone else in the queue?
Madam President, that was the only comment.
Okay, thank you so much. Hearing that there's no other commenters, public comment is now closed. All right, commissioners, this opportunity to have a discussion about this 2-year cycle budget that Heather Green just presented to us. And I'm going to call on commissioners as I saw your hand go up. And so Commissioner Mall, and then after that, I'm going to call Commissioner Wolf.
Heather, I don't know you and I can't even see you. Your picture is not here, but only your charts are here. But
it's the best of me, that's for sure.
I just wanted to say welcome. And I think I guess you mentioned that you'd been on staff for a couple months, but you seem to really have grasped the budget in a very significant way. And I applaud you for that because I know there's a lot of moving parts.
Thank you.
I read the article in the San Francisco Chronicle today, as I'm sure everyone did, about the deficits in the city. And I mean, we're going to have to make some hard choices. I guess this isn't the moment to make them. But, we've been in a great position for several years and now we're not. But I did like several of the new ideas, and I trust that you'll come back to us with some decisions that we have to make and establish our priorities. But I just wanted to welcome you and say that you've done a great job so far, even though I can't see you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you. I want to reiterate what Susan said. First of all, I want to thank Maureen, who has been doing such amazing work with the budget since the time I've known her. And so thank you, Maureen, for that leadership and for bringing on board Heather, who I think clearly grasps not only the challenges, but opportunities, and recognizes what a special place the library is. I had a couple of questions, and they're probably best asked to Michael, perhaps. But my questions are about the book vending, the Yell program, and the new program, the SFPL Scholars at Home. I always appreciate the way in which the staff work together to set the priorities of what the new funding opportunities are for the year ahead. You really do have a very analytical way of approaching this to really set those priorities, so I appreciate that. The Yell program, which to me is really important, I wonder, and I love that it's going to expand year round, but I feel like that $500 amount feels very low to me as a stipend for the participation of the students, and I'd love to find a way that maybe that might be increased or be more in alignment with really generating more interest and giving the students more compensation for their time. I just feel like high school students these days, so many of them have to have jobs, and how can this be something that really can benefit from intellectually as well as financially. So I just want to encourage that. And then I wanted to get a better understanding of what the San Francisco Public Library Scholars at Home, it sounds fantastic, but could you maybe describe that a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. I'll begin with these Scholars at Home program. And, you heard earlier that equity is going to be the library's North Star, racial equity. And we see an opportunity with the SFPL Scholars at Home initiative in the coming year to build upon the work that we've been doing in this pandemic. Access to library services has been severely curtailed. And we've been participating in different types of book drives. We've been providing books to people experiencing homelessness that have been sheltering in hotels, families with children. We've partnered with the Human Rights Commission on some initiatives to distribute free books to vulnerable populations of youth and families. Most recently, we provided a library tote bag filled with age-appropriate grade-level reading for all the youth in all of the learning hubs citywide. And we want to build upon this work and carry forward the momentum and seed personal libraries for individuals, youth and families to have their own libraries to begin their experience with owning books and with just really seeding these habits of literacy and reading and learning with our most vulnerable populations. There's been numerous studies done over the years about access to books, access to words that are spoken to young children. So we see this as a wonderful opportunity to have an impact and support our future public-facing racial equity goals that will begin, in earnest with phase 2. But we're not waiting for that plan to be completely mapped out. We want to build upon the good work we've been doing in the current fiscal year. With regards to the automated kiosk, San Francisco has invested in their library system. We have the second most library outlets per square mile of any municipality in the country. So 28 libraries and 49 square miles. We are cognizant that there are still gaps in our service, and there are emerging neighborhoods and needs for access to library services. There are so many neighborhoods in San Francisco that don't have easy geographic access to a physical library. And we also have to be cognizant of sustainability and, our ability to staff and operate library locations. So we're interested in piloting innovative new service models where we can provide access to our robust collections. These kiosks will allow patrons to have access to a selection of bestsellers, children's books, young adult titles, but also have the ability to reserve materials from any location and have it delivered into a holds locker that they can check out. This, doesn't require a physical building with staff and hours of operation. We can be strategic in where we locate these machines and really extend our reach into the community in an economical fashion. With regards to the Yell program, I will just mention Yell is one of multiple youth engagement initiatives that we have. We have other opportunities for young people to get involved. We have something called San Francisco Youth Works, where we have paid positions for 11th and 12th graders. We have other volunteer opportunities. But with regards to Yell, it's proven to be a successful model. And our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, Michelle Jeffers, She oversees this program, so she can speak more to the vision for expanding it and the level of compensation. Michelle, can you chime in here?
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, commissioners. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, so we are looking at ways that we can maybe find some synergies between the Yale and the scholarships we provide, which we don't want to give up that pathway to higher education for them, but also looking at ways that we can combine it possibly and customize our YouthWorks program to also serve those same Yale students.
Great. Well, this is really helpful. I want to thank you for, I really think these are really great additions to the budget and to the programming. The book vending, when you see $960,000 on the list, it's a huge ticket item. And I have spent some time on Treasure Island recently dealing with volunteer work and food security issues. And it really is a cultural and educational oasis, and it is really in need of something. But I don't want to, I think also what people also need are interactions with people and having access to what the San Francisco Public Library staff is so good at, which is really working with their constituents and offering expertise and inviting opportunities. So I hope that as you work on the book vending, it has some kind of personal and personnel engagement component, because without it, I don't think that it is putting our best foot forward, because we are so known for what the professionalism that the library staff brings to a community and how they inspire that community. So I just don't want to lose sight of a machine replacing what the staff is so good at doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. I'm going to call on Commissioner Lee.
Yes. Thanks very much for the presentation style. I like it because it aligns with those two, the racial equity and economic recovery. So there is no confusion that how the priority are being set and aligned with.
Thank you.
Yeah. The couple of questions that I have is that I know that we will have to make some tough decision. Now, looking at the two charts, strategic priority, premier urban library, and racial equity, I'm wondering if it is possible to add a column such that we know the impact, so that if we have to sort of make a difficult trade-off, then we know what it is impacted, whether you would put impact as a number of beneficiary or whatever the impact that those proposals will align to. So that will help us to discuss with a little additional dimension. Otherwise, it's very qualitative and it's just a little bit difficult. So just wondering if that would be possible. So take the case of book vending machine, we know that what is the estimated people who would be benefiting from a book vending machine, or that sort of thing. And if it were take the case, the one that I really like echoes back to the previous agenda item, which is racial equity. So when there's a racial equity diversity training, if the impact is how many how many people would be trained, then we know. And as a matter of fact, in the case of racial equity reporting in terms of a culture, I look at it as that culture is very important, and culture depends on attitude and culture depends on behavior. Mm-hmm. And before that, those would be the training. So I'm so happy to see the training here. So anyway, the long and short of all, I'm just wondering if you could make sort of decision-making a little bit easier to know the ramification when we have to make tough trade-offs.
Yes, I can do that when I come back. Yeah, I think it's so important. I really appreciate the attention to the actual impacts and ramifications of any decision with dollars. I mean, part of the reason I love budget is, to me, it's a policy document, right? You're deciding what directions you want to be able to move in the near term. And so, yes, we will be sure to bring that to you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, commissioners. Are there any other further comments by commissioners that I might have oversaw?
Looks like Vice President Mall has her hand raised.
Okay, yes, Vice President Mall.
I was trying to take my hand off.
Yeah, I think they've all gone.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So thank you so much, Heather. We will see you next month. And thank you for the very clear reporting and explanations that you provided for us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now we're going to move on to our city librarian report. This item is to allow the city librarian to report on recent library activities and to make announcements. There's accompanying documents. There's several items that he and the staff are going to be reporting on that that are available to you. City Librarian Lambert.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a number of items to share this evening, and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter. Michelle Jeffers is our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships. She'll be highlighting a recent award from the Urban Libraries Council, as well as our annual report for fiscal year 20. Michelle?
Thank you, Michael. Hello, commissioners. This is Michelle Jeffers, the Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships. First off, the Urban Libraries Council, good news. Once again, the council has recognized San Francisco Public Library as a top innovator in its annual Library Innovation Awards. Slide, please. This time, it's for the STEM Challenge Yourself program. As you may recall, you heard about this in our Yale and Summer Stride presentations that were presented before the commission earlier this year. When shelter in place occurred, librarians quickly pivoted to offering virtual programs online, in particular for the Summer Stride program. And part of that was this multi-part series of STEM educational programs where students and families could follow along at home with simple household items to make experiments and learn about science and math concepts. This series included librarian-led STEM challenges, as well as our teen takeover, those same Yale teens we were just talking about, demonstrating and teaching a number of scientific challenges. To date, this STEM Challenge Yourself program has been viewed more than 10,000 times on our YouTube channel. And I just want to say congrats and kudos to this amazing cross-divisional team of youth services librarians from Branches, Maine, and CPP, our media services team, and our social media and communications team. They created, filmed, and spread the word about this series far and wide. And a big thank you to ULC for recognizing, once again, the excellence of SFPL. Next slide, thank you. As Michael mentioned, I'm also here to discuss the annual report for fiscal year 19 and 20, which of course was a very unique year in the library experience. You have a full PDF of the report in your packets. My presentation is really just intended to highlight some of the themes of the year. First off, before I get into those themes, I want to give kudos to the team that created this report, writing the content, designing the pages, in the theme of a newspaper, the library leader. We thought this would be a fun and inspiring way to tell our story this year, and much thanks to our communications director, Kate Patterson, our public relations officer, Jamie Wong, our graphic designers, Michelle McNeil and Betty Ho, who really realized this vision for a newspaper idea and conceived and created the whole thing. So thank them very much. Next slide. Again, the point of this is to highlight the services, initiatives, and programs of the past year in our annual report. We included a table of contents to make it more usable for readers. There are also links embedded throughout the online version so readers can click through for more information, some videos, connections to our website. We played a lot with the newspaper theme this year, so you'll find within its pages even a comics page, an advice column, even a vows page, along with lots of news and pictures. Our major highlight on the front page is the disaster service work that our staff undertook to keep San Franciscans having shelter, food, and services during the pandemic. We also highlighted our e-library resources, which of course exploded as patrons were sheltering at home and were able to use the library as they stayed home. Next slide. We broke it up a little bit for this presentation into pre-pandemic highlights and post-pandemic highlights. So this year included many wonderful experiences and programs that occurred pre-COVID-19, from our wonderful One City, One Book event in partnership with the San Francisco Arts Commission and the city's Indigenous People celebration last fall, to our annual toy and book giveaway from December of 2019 at City Hall, and of course to our Night to Remember, the second annual Night of Ideas that brought 6,000 people into the main library on a Saturday night in late January. These things all feel very much like a lifetime ago from where we are now. So we wanted to remind and celebrate these accomplishments. Next slide. Other tremendous initiatives of the year included the launch of our new website, SFPL.org, which of course has become vitally important in communicating with our patrons while our indoor service is suspended. Also, thanks to all of you for initiating our fine-free efforts last year. That was just in the previous fiscal year. This too was well-timed, as within the first months of shelter in place, there was no ability to allow our patrons to return their overdue books. Fine-free continues to be a barrier-breaking initiative that allows greater access and equity for all our library resources. Next slide. Post-pandemic, we of course want to highlight the virtual library that was created to direct people easily to the multitude of resources that were available, from books, music, and movies to trainings, classes, and a wealth of virtual programs. We also highlighted the Summer Stride Pivot, which maintained this critical program online and by mail with book lists and trackers mailed out to all the SFUSD students, an online reading challenge, and of course, dozens of engaging programs for all ages that could be viewed from the comfort of their homes. I mentioned our DSW workers previously, but we also highlighted our return to library services with our curbside library to go. And we used a vows column for that. So it was a true love reunited, connecting people again with their books and DVDs. Next slide. As I mentioned, we had fun with the format. Michelle McNeil, one of our graphic designers, created a comics page that highlights some of the more humorous questions our reference librarians receive, and as well as our Dear Susan column, our own advice column. This is advice from our city archivist, Susan Goldstein, about the COVID time capsule that the History Center created to mark this remarkable experience for our city. Next slide. Also highlighted were some of our award-winning initiatives of that past year. Librarian Janet Tom received the National I Love My Librarian Award for her outstanding librarianship, including presenting a hugely popular Death and Dying series of programs. And then the Talking Books and Braille Center was named the Library of the Year for its outreach and service to patrons with visual disabilities. Next slide. As you saw from the racial equity presentation, we also wanted to highlight the hard but critical work that team is doing, and it's been going on all year behind the scenes with our staff to advance racial equity in all aspects of the library. Next slide. And here, as required, is our fiscal year budget of our expenditures from the 19 and 20 fiscal year. Next slide. As we do usually in our annual report, we also highlight the work of the Friends of San Francisco Public Library and the grant expenditures we made from their grants. Friends, of course, has been very generous in its funding to us this year. Many of the initiatives and programs that I've already spoken about have been undertaken thanks to the financial support of Friends. That included both in-person events pre-pandemic to critical programs and services that we started post-pandemic. Next slide. This year, of course, because of the pandemic and shutting our doors, we were not able to do the level of programming expected. And thus, that resulted in us being unable to expend the full award granted to us last year by the Friends. Still, Friends was instrumental in supporting us to the tune of $450,000 or $454,450 in direct spending. Much of that spending in the spring helped us to pivot to online programs, as well as to support our staff with plexiglass shields, masks, and other PPE needs as we reopen for SFPL to go service. We want to express our gratitude to the Friends and their generosity and flexibility in this funding support. Next slide. And then finally, our annual report closes with a thank you to the SFPL staff. So many of them have done so much this year, keeping library services running and our city's disaster relief occurring despite these challenges. And that concludes my annual report.
Thank you, Michelle. Finally, I also have a brief report on the status of the community hubs. As a reminder, this initiative is a partnership with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families to support the city's most vulnerable populations of school-aged children with their distance learning. These hubs also provide access to meals and social and emotional supports. You may recall last month, we previously reported out on the successful hubs activation at Visitation Valley, North Beach, Western Addition, and Bayview branches, joining the Richmond and Bernal Heights locations, which launched the month prior. Just this morning, our Mayor, London Breed, issued a press release announcing the San Francisco Community Hubs Initiative for Youth has successfully completed the first semester of the 2021 school year. Next slide, please. The library is proud of our ongoing contributions to this successful partnership. I'm pleased to report that the Ingleside Branch Library launched successfully on December 2nd and is accommodating up to 12 youth. The Community Youth Center, also known as CYC, is the community-based organization responsible for managing and operating this site. They are being supported by the branch manager, Nina, and her team at Ingleside, as well as our custodial staff from our facilities division. Next slide, please. I have once again included the citywide dashboard as an explanatory document. We are currently operating around 80% capacity as of last Friday with figures that I received. Empty slots will be filled by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families as they continue to work through their registration process with targeted youth and families. Next slide, please. And waiting in the wings are Chinatown, Sunset, and Ortega branches. These other locations may be activated as part of Phase 3, potentially in January. We are currently in discussions as of this week with our DCYF partners about the prospect of adding the Golden Gate Valley branch to this list of sites being considered for future activation. Golden Gate Valley is currently sitting idle. So I will keep the commission apprised of future developments. And before I conclude the city librarian's report, I just want to acknowledge our library staff. 2020 has been a year unlike any in the history of this institution, dating back to 1879. And I am so proud of the hard work, the passion, the commitment, and the resiliency of San Francisco Public Library staff. We are a top innovator and a leading urban library in the library industry, but more importantly, we are dedicated public servants that are here for our city and county of San Francisco at a time when our community needs us the most. So I just want to thank all of our library staff for all their hard work and for what they do each and every day to support the health of our community. And that concludes the city librarian's report.
Thank you so much, City Librarian. And we'll have opportunity for the commissioners to be in discussion with you and the rest of your staff that made the report. Now we're going to go to our public comment on this item and operations. Are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are commenters in the queue.
Will you please put the first commenter through?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. You can reach us at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Thank you for the reports. Brief comments. With respect to the annual report, it was not clear to me whether the $454,000, I believe, that's described was fully spent or not spent because of COVID-19. If not, is what is shown what was spent, and what proportion of spent versus not spent is in fact the case. It's not clear to me from this report what was either promised or pledged or planned versus what was actually spent. And with respect to community hubs, I find the reports fairly confusing, but above all, there seems to be the use of entire library buildings that would normally be serving thousands of people in the neighborhood, including children, including adults, including all kinds of people, being used for an extremely small number of kids. Now, there's no problem with serving the kids that are being served and serving any kids that have a need for whatever purposes they need. Certainly that's a good thing for the city to be doing. But there are many other places included in the list of places available for kids. And it's also not clear to me why the library branches couldn't have portions set aside for use by the kids, as they might be in a different location that's smaller, and still be able to reserve the library for whatever limited degree of usage might make sense. Seems to me that the library is completely converting in these locations, which have shot up and down in number constantly throughout this whole time. But it seems to be reserving a large number of spaces exclusively for the use of a very small number of kids, and it should consider what level of usage can be provided to the public in these libraries as well or instead of. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments?
Yes.
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Please put them through. Operations.
Marie, your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay. Hello, this is Marie Sapella, Executive Director of Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. Good evening. Michelle loved the newspaper, very creative, as is expected from your department all the time. I can answer one of the previous callers' questions, which is the reported number in the library's annual report is the actual cash expended. It was a little over half of what the accept and extend was approved by the supervisors for that fiscal year, for the fiscal year that ended June 30. Clearly there was COVID had everything to do with that in the early days of transition. And generally speaking, we do see the fourth quarter of the year as when the library really kind of lays on the expenses on us. So that didn't happen. But what we're seeing now is a return to normal. There's a lot planned for January that we're already, prepared to fund. So that's just the explanation for this year that, unlike any other. But we are completely ready for the coming year and what's coming, and to increase what we can support. The types of programs that you've seen in the budget presentation are exactly what we are ready and able to contribute additional funds for in any way that we possibly can. I'd like to also report that, in our activities this year, which have obviously also included all sorts of restructuring and crazy, really instantaneous decisions on how to survive, we have reorganized ourselves a lot. And what we have found is we're leaner and more effective. And we have found that the support from the community for their library is stronger. We are doing, the community is just coming forward and saying, it doesn't matter that it's closed. I'm in, I'm still here, and whatever you all need in the future for the children that are missing school, for the people without work, and the racial inequity issues, we are there. And I just want you to know that. And then the final piece of news is we have also been without a director of philanthropy for the thing. So my life has been really fun, but I'm happy to announce that we have finally filled that position. Craig Palmer did retire from his 40-year career in fundraising. And now our new director of philanthropy, some of you may know, is going to be Kim Drew, who will be starting in January. So we look forward to really getting on it with this public-private partnership, and we're there for anything that the library possibly needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, caller, for the comment. Operations, are there any further callers?
Madam President, there are no additional callers in the queue.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to turn it back over to our commission for discussion on this item. Commission, you have the librarian's report. It is quite robust, and we have Michelle and some other folks that are available to be able to comment. And so I'm monitoring the hand raising right now. If you have a comment to make, go ahead and put your hand up now. I'm going to go ahead and call on Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you. I know I'm doing a lot of talking tonight, but I'm just at the end of this year, I'm just so grateful to the extraordinary team at San Francisco Public Library. You are just amazing in what you are able to do, the way you pivoted with such grace and enthusiasm and confidence to meet the unexpected challenges, and you continue to do that each and every day. I got to work side by side with so many of the people from the staff at the food bank, and most recently I went and I picked up my books from the to-go spot at the main library, and I was so delighted by the cheerfulness, the professionalism, the gratitude, everything that the staff exuded, protocols, their kindness, their generosity. It was really, it made me feel so proud. And I got my book, so I was really happy. But I just want to say thank you for doing your job so wonderfully, so graciously, gracefully, in these most challenging times. I know how I can only imagine how frustrated you are that you can't really do everything you want to do, because you went into this field because you care deeply about books, about access, about democracy, about education. And I just want to say thank you for making sure all the things are addressed each and every day. So thank you, and here's to a brighter and more healthy year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wolf, for those very laudable and encouraging comments. I'm looking for any other commissioners that may have a comment to make or a question for the staff on the librarian's report.
Madam President, Commissioner Lopez has her hand raised.
Okay, I'm trying to, did I miss you? Go ahead, Commissioner Lopez. Oh, yes.
No, you did not. I think my hand went up later. Thank you for the report. Thank you for the work. It's really amazing. I just have a couple questions. The first question, by the way, the library leader is really great and easy to follow. But I was wondering, because we have a lot of youth programs that are doing amazing, I wonder if there is and you're probably already doing this, but writings from the participants, from the students that are engaged, either kind of like a anecdotal or something about their experience. I don't know if that is available or if you do that. I just thought that it would be nice to see what their perspective is on the activities, because they gain so much and it's so well built and staff and prepare. So that was just a comment or a question. And then I think my second question is for Michael. In terms of the community hubs, have they have any planning when the schools go back in session? I know that there's been some talks that potentially the spring semester schools will reopen, but who knows? So what will be the transition like of, once schools reopen? I was just curious about what the plans are, if there are any. And other than that, I want to thank everyone for the report.
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. And yes, we do collect that feedback from our youth. I think due to the constraints of the size of our annual report, we had difficulty trying to fit everything in, but we do collect that feedback and we have featured it in previous presentations, and we'll continue to endeavor to feature our young people and the great work they do and their positive experience. With regards to the community hubs, citywide, the capacity in the community hubs is a little bit over 1,800 slots. That's not counting phase 3 activations in January. And that's really a relative drop in the bucket when you consider SFUSD has over 55,000 students. We meet with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families twice a week, our library leadership team. And, we have been discussing the SFUSD plan for reopening and, how that could impact the hubs. Ideally, SFUSD puts us out of business, but we are continuing to plan to operate these hubs through the end of the academic year. From what I've read so far, SFUSD's reopening plans will not get all of their students back into the classroom before the end of the academic year. So I think there's still going to be continued need for this service. I think as SFUSD endeavors to target many of the same most vulnerable youth and families, that does raise some questions about what these youth do if they go back to school 2 days a week. Are they still going to have access to the hubs on the other 3 days a week? So we are scenario planning. We are having those discussions with our partners, but we're just firmly committed to doing this work as long as we need to do it.
Thank you so much, Michael, for answering that question. I'm monitoring. I don't see any other commissioner hands up. So I'm just going to say very quickly that Michelle, thank you so much for your service and so much of the work you've done. And I know that you lift up other people's work, but a lot of this work oftentimes originates with you as well. I wanted to just make a comment on the community hubs, and I just wanted to say it in light of some of the comments that I heard from the community this evening. These community hubs are based upon needs, and they're specifically based upon providing out-of-class support for children and youth, and throughout the city, but particularly in these targeted equity zones, in which they would already have disproportionate outcomes based upon where they reside, as well as other factors that are working against them. And so when I look at the numbers that have been put together on the community hubs, my heart was so excited when I saw some of the numbers that were some of the areas that were hundreds of children were participating in these community hubs. Particularly, I was looking at the Bayview and the Mission, and even in Chinatown. So one of the things that I just want to say is that this work is actually mission critical. The community hubs is literally a collaborative of the city, of agencies, of anchor institutions that are stepping in to help those children and families who need it the most, so that they don't have these huge deficits in their learning because of COVID-19 and not having everything they need from technologies and what have you. So I'm just really pleased to see that report and see those numbers. And I know it seems like yesterday, Director Sue was giving us a report and putting it together, and then in no time it seemed like it was put together, and here we are to see the actual numbers of the first semester. And I see all that as a win for the children. I see it as a win for the families. I see it for the win for all the agencies and community-based organizations that were involved. And I'm so grateful for SFPL for being a partner in that. Because you won't know about it till later. Some child's life was saved. Some family's life was saved because of this work. We can be guaranteed that, even though we don't know those individual stories yet. So thank you all for a fine city librarian's report. So we are going to move on, y'all, to the next item is number 6, and that's the approval of the minutes from November 5th, 2020. This will require action from the commissioners, and we'll do that after we come back from our public comment. So we're going to open it up now to public comment. And operations, are there any callers in the queue?
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Okay, if you would put that caller through.
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. The minutes today are kind of refreshing and look like they were not made by the city librarian, but have been signed by Almer Castillo, Executive Assistant. So thank you for the good. There are some, I wouldn't say even improvements, but corrections that I think are important, because it needs to be understood what some of these important issues and specifics have to be. In my comment, before you went into closed session regarding your public employee appointment, November the 5th, I said there, pardon?
Continue, caller.
I heard sounded like somebody was speaking. He said there, it says, I said there was no library affairs position listed under the bylaws. And what I said was that there was not a position such as what you were hiring for in the bylaws, just the Library Commission Secretary. So I think that just needs to be corrected to show the actual title of the position that you were going into closed session to consider hiring. There's another thing that's even more important in terms of detail that has to be correct. You are required to file 700 forms, which were put in place, I believe, in 1974 by the Public Records Act. And the Public Records Act gave a committee, a body called the Fair Political Practices Committee or Commission, to enforce, among other things, enforce that law. Now, those who have to file that are responsible and have to sign under perjury the truth of what they are saying. Our city librarian, the predecessor of the current one, Luis Herrera, had repeatedly over multiple years said that he had received nothing from anybody, including particularly money. And in fact, that was not true. As a result of a variety of matters, including activists who dug that information out, the FPPC enforced the law, and he agreed that he had violated the law, and so on and so forth. So where it says, he said, in fact, our city librarian violated the FPPC, that would be kind of a hard job. He violated the law, the Public Records Act, and they enforced it. And same for Sunshine Ordinance. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force at the very end of that paragraph is the one that enforced.
Madam President, you were muted.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for unmuting me. And thank you, caller, for those comments. Are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue at this time.
Thank you so much. And so, commissioners, I'm coming back to you. Are there, first of all, is there any comment or discussion on this item? This is number 6, approval of the minutes of November 5th. Seeing that there's none, is there a commissioner who would like to make a motion?
Madam President, Vice President Mall has her hand raised.
Thank you so much for monitoring that for me. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a second?
I'll make a second. This is Connie Wolf.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wolf. All righty. And so, so now that we have the second, I'm going to call the question for all the remaining commissioners. We have a motion and a second. And so all of those who say aye, who vote aye, please say aye.
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 Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Huang, Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Lopez, and Commissioner Ono say aye, and Commissioner Mall and Commissioner Wolf had already said the motion. All those that say no. Okay, myself included, I say aye, so the minutes are approved for November 15th as they are. Thank you November 5th, 2020, thank you very much. And now we're going to move to our last item. So sorry, there's an ambulance outside of my window here, so just a little distracted. We're going to move on to our last item, which is item number 7. Actually, we're going to move to our last item, which is going to be item number 8, which is the adjournment.
Madam President, we actually have 2 sets of minutes. I'm sorry, it may be confusing, but we had the special meeting on November 5th, and we have another set of minutes that need to be approved. It's item 7 on the agenda.
Thank you so much. I apologize. This ambulance outside my window just caught me off guard. Okay, so we're going to move now to agenda item number 7, which is the approval of the minutes of November 19th, 2020. And with that, we are going to go into our public comment, please.
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Will you please put the commenter through?
Caller number 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
Well, good evening again, commissioners. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. It sounds like there was a bit of confusion about the minutes, but I once again want to say that it looks like Almer Castillo did quite a good job. It is very disappointing to hear the commissioners not even discuss specific things about the accuracy of what becomes your history and what you may at some point want to go back to review if you hadn't been to a meeting or for some other reason if you wanted to refresh your memory. It is very disappointing that the commissioners should have so little interest in the written word and its accuracy. On agenda item number 1, it says that I said that the procedures were very inadequate in terms of the description on the agenda. What I was talking about was the procedures for participating in this remote meeting. And I think that needs to be included as a small phrase to be added. On public comment that I made with respect to the Department Racial Equity Plan, it says that I said he's a little bit disappointed to hear that the San Francisco Public Library's Racial Equity Task Force had been ongoing since early 2018, period. No, I wasn't disappointed that it was going on since 2018. That gives a completely wrong impression. The next sentence should be connected to the first one that I just read with a yet. Yet, he said he didn't recall hearing about this ongoing work until this meeting. That's what I was disappointed about, not hearing about this meeting, the meetings of this body, an important body, for 2 years. I'd like that to be a single sentence connected with yet, coming after 2018. Otherwise, it gives a completely wrong impression of what I said and what I intended. On public comment for number 4, I asked not for the commissioners' emails, but for the commissioners' email addresses. And I said those have been posted on for many other bodies. And that about runs my time out. There's often a use of they, and it's not clear who they is when it really should be Library Users Association
3 minutes.
or he for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, caller. Operations, are there any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters at this time.
Okay, seeing that there's no further public comment is now closed. Okay, commissioners, before us, we have the approval of the minutes of November 19th, 2020, our second set. And I am going to now get on my page so I can monitor the hands. Do we have a commissioner to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wong. And I see, do we have a commissioner a second? I see that Commissioner Ono. Do you want to go ahead and say it?
Yes, I want to, before I second the motion, I want to thank Almer Castillo for doing such a wonderful job during the interim while we were searching for a new secretary. So Almer had done an outstanding job on the minutes, and I just want her to know that. And also, I second the motion to approve the November 19th minutes that she did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. So we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to call the remaining commissioners by name. And please say aye if you are in support of it. Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall. Unmute yourself. Commissioner Mall. Someone help her out. There you go. Commissioner Mall?
Aye.
I heard you. Okay. And Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Okay, great. And I also, for the record, and I am an aye as well. So the motion passes. Thank you all. So now we're going to move on to our final item for real this time, and that is adjourning our meeting. This has been a really wonderful meeting. And we have one more action, and we will go to our final public comment of the evening.
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the commenter through, please?
Caller 5, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. There are a number of times that I've said this, and I'll say it again. You are cheating the public if you do not insist before adjourning that your future agendas have on them routinely, preferably at the end where you used to have them, have this item. An item for items you wish to see on an agenda in the future. You may want to have an expansion. You may have something that was brought up. There may be questions about something. You may have your own particular concern or interest on behalf of yourself, on behalf of the public, and so on. This used to be a regular feature of the Library Commission agendas, and it is currently at many bodies. It gives each member, each commissioner, a chance to bring up something that they may want on a future agenda. You shouldn't leave this meeting without insisting that that be included in future agendas. As I say, you're cheating people, and all kinds of things come if you don't do it. And all kinds of things come up that are important and interesting, and that you may want to open up for further discussion and activity. So once again, I think you should be insisting on that, and I think you should also be discussing, for example, what is your role? Is your role to simply rubber stamp what has been brought to you by the library administration? Or are you supposed to indeed be an independent body that sets policy? And I think you ought to discuss minutes where, for a few words, you might make them accurate, and where instead you not only disrespect the public who comes to speak by completely ignoring what they say without any discussion, but you also indicate that you don't care not only about accuracy, but whether the public has been fairly represented. And that, I think, is a very significant thing. It distorts your minutes. It distorts your history if you don't at least discuss whether or not what the person requested was reasonable or accurate and would complete your minutes in an accurate and fair way. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator, are there any further commenters?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Thank you so much, Operations, for your support this evening. All right, Commissioners, we have our final action, which is to adjourn this meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? John, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yes, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you so much. Is there a second?
I second.
That was Commissioner Lopez for the record. Okay, just make sure that I got my little notes here. All the remaining commissioners, I will call you to adjourn the meeting. And if you're in favor, say aye. Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Lee? No, Lee already did. I'm so sorry. Commissioner Mall?
Aye.
Commissioner Ono?
Aye, and happy holidays.
Thanks. And Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
And I think that was everyone, including myself. Commissioner Wardell Garridou say aye. And so with that, everyone's in favor to adjourn the meeting. And this meeting now is adjourned. Thank you all so much for really a wonderful 2020, even though much of the time we were not meeting it's been part of the time because of COVID-19. And thank you for the ways in which you transitioned commissioners to this virtual environment. And thank you to the public for also transitioning with us. Have a good evening, everyone.